Welcome back to Meet Bridget, a show that sheds light on the often untold teenage and young adult stories of successful women from all types of backgrounds and in all sorts of careers. This show is an extension of our confidence coaching service for young women. I'm Kishia Rosenberg, and I co host this show alongside my best friend and Meet Bridget founder and CEO, Asha Gabriel. This is season 4 of Meet Bridget, and today I am so excited to have you meet Samantha Lopez, hairdresser, stylist, color savant, and my dear, dear friend of so many years. Samantha Lopez, aka Goth Hair Bae, is a dedicated craft hairdresser and the owner of a studio salon at Salon Republic in the Topanga Village, Woodland Hills, California. Since 2010, she's specialized in alternative cuts and color, bringing unique and personalized styles to her diverse and ever expanding clientele. Dedicated to maintaining an inclusive and affirming environment, Goth Hair Bae is committed to creating a welcoming space for LGBTQIA plus individuals and marginalized communities, ensuring everyone feels valued and celebrated in her salon. I'm so excited to have you on the show, Sam.
Me
I'm so
too.
proud of you. And let's get into it. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so I've known Sam for many years. You are one of my oldest and dearest friends. We go back to junior high, high school. Tell our audience a little bit about where you're from, your background. Let's get into it.
Okay, cool. So I'm from Los Angeles, California, born and raised. I was literally born at UCLA. Have like bounced around the valley, Santa Clarita, back and forth a little bit throughout my life, but mainly just kind of stayed in Southern California.
Nice. So are you an only child? Do you have siblings?
Such a hard question. I have always thought of myself as an only child, but as I've grown older, I've realized that I actually have always had either my cousins around. One of my cousins lived with me for a year. I lived with them for a year. I have my stepbrother who is, I want to say he's like 12 years older than me. So he was around when I was little. And then when I turned 15, I met my half brother and sister in Mexico for the first time. So, long answer, no, I'm not an only child, but I feel like I kind of was for a while there.
So you're used to being sort of on your own, more isolated in terms of like, it sounds like being independent in your growth.
Yes.
What were you like as a kid? I mean,
Um,
pre middle school, pre me knowing Sam.
like little kitty.
Yeah.
Um, so when I was little, we lived in an area, kind of a cool area in between Santa Clarita and I would say like Granada Hills. And we had like, I want to say like 10 acres of land. And at that time, I was living with my mom and my stepdad. And my stepdad was really like encouraging for me to spend time outside, to be in nature, to like just go play and create and explore. So I spent a lot of time during that time kind of on my own. My stepbrother was like back and forth. So I was just like going outside and like going on really crazy hikes by myself as like a like I would say probably like 7-year old, just like finding like weird artifacts and dead things and bringing them home.
Very apropos considering your business name.
Yes. I like to draw a lot. Trying to think of what else. I loved my shows. I watched My Little Pony, stuff like that. Just kind of like a little like
A little weirdo.
loner.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little weirdo, a little loner.
My next
Yes.
question was going to be, did you hang out with anyone or are you more like independent? Because I've always known you to be very independent and I wouldn't necessarily say isolated, but I like you definitely have a smaller core group of friends and stay very loyal to them as opposed to me seeing you with like lots and lots of different people.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I definitely had friends. Like I had a friend that was close to me who we went to the same elementary school, but we ended up kind of like moving further apart. But for years, my best friend, I spent so much time with her. I had it actually, even though I lived on 10 acres of land, we had a little house next to us that we rented out. And I had like Weirdly, both of the girls' names were Samantha, I just realized. My best friend in elementary school was Samantha, and my next door neighbor was Samantha.
It's a tale of three Samanthas.
That's for my homies. Yeah, so I did have that camaraderie, and also like my cousins are very close in age with me. And so I would say I spent so much time with them like as if they were my siblings. So like I always kind of had somebody around, but then I had those moments of like, just chilling, doing my thing.
Being very internal.
Yeah, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
definitely like more of an introvert, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I can see like maybe that's where the creativity starts to come in and like finding the different hobbies and artifacts and dead things.
Yes. Yes.
So when you say the area between Santa Clarita and Granada Hills, is that Acton or was that somewhere else?
No. So there's like this strip after you come down Foothill and you pass around Sierra Highway, you pass the graveyard, Eternal Valley.
Mhm.
I lived in there.
The graveyard?
I lived near the graveyard, dude. Crazy.
I feel like I'm recording an episode of Beetlejuice, um,
Yes.
which I love. Okay. So I met you in either middle school or high school. And for those of you who've listened to some of our more recent episodes, I interviewed Shelby Coy, who's a certified behavioral analyst. And Shelby and Sam and I it's the same little core group of dear friends since junior high school. So if you'd listened to her episode, you'd know that she grew up in a little area called Acton, which is where I also met Sam. And it is outside of Santa Clarita and sort of in between Santa Clarita Palmdale area, but it's a very like rural, small town vibes, very deserty. Like sometimes you'll see tumbleweeds like blowing by. Like it's where they used to film
Legit.
the Wild West like movies and shows. So that's what it looks like. When did you end up moving there and what prompted that? Because your cousins are there too, right?
Yes. So like they actually followed later. So as a child, like younger child, all my cousins were kind of around. And then my aunt got a divorce and decided to move to Phoenix, Arizona. And that's actually where most of my mom's side of the family is. They've always been there. They moved there when my mom was like 18 or something. And my mom was like, I'm staying, I'm a California girl. Like, don't take me away from here.
Yeah. Okay, so she decided to move to Acton and then some of your cousins followed. Was it a big transition for you or was it kind of more of the same?
It's hard to really say because, like, now that we're talking about this, I'm kind of realizing I always lived in kind of a weird place. Like, we lived in that place in, I guess, in between Santa Clarita and the Valley. That was kind of secluded, like, not a lot of neighbors, just that one. And then I think at a certain point, my stepdad was just like, you know what? I have this dream of just like having my own property, my own land. I think he was renting that. And so that's when we started looking into Agua Dulce and Acton, because there was so much land. It is so rural. He was like, I want to build my own house and like have like this whole ranch. And he was calling it El Sueño, the dream. And so we bought our first piece of land in Agua Dulce in, I would say I was probably about 8. And we lived there for a while in like a little motorhome, and we had like crazy neighbors that just didn't want us to build on that land. And there was a lot of tension all the time. So my dad was like, you know what? We got to sell this. We got to just like find another spot. And so later on, we ended up buying another kind of large quantity of property. I would say there's like 28 acres that my dad owned.
Oh, really?
Mhm. And at that time, I think I was kinda like 9, 10, like 2000. That's when I really started, like, working with my hands a lot. Like, my dad had me out there. I was driving tractors and building chain link fences by the time I was 10.
Oh my God.
Yeah. My dad had me out there with gloves, like, I was digging those holes. I mean, yeah, we really did a
It's
lot together.
hot during the summer in
Yes,
Acton
it
and Agua
is.
Dulce. I
Yeah.
mentioned Wild West films. I also forgot to mention that Vasquez Rocks is located there, and that's where they filmed the Flintstones. which is
Yes,
meant
we're
to
very
be
close to there.
a desert scene. So, like, just so you have an idea of where Sam was building chain link fences and developing land. Oh my
Yeah, we're
gosh,
like clearing out sagebrush and like yucca bushes and stuff. I mean, it's crazy like thinking back, we didn't have AC.
that's wild.
We we stayed in a shack that my dad built by hand that me and my mom literally physically helped him build. And we drove like 1970s, 1960s trucks that had no AC. That was just life. Like that's what I knew. I was like hanging out in the back of the pickup truck.
Were you having fun?
I did have fun, but then there was also like the side of me that was like, I just wish we had like a nice car with AC, like just once. Like there were crazy situations happening. Like we lived up a 3 mile dirt road. We would get like stuck on there, and my dad would be like, Sammy, get out and sit on the back of the truck. I need some weight back there to like, so I can drive out of here. And I'd be like, I really don't want to. And he'd be like, just do it. Like crazy shit like that.
The things your parents make you do. I was like the designated. I had to climb onto the roof to like get the cable guy down, like when they would
Oh my
inevitably
God.
get stuck, or like there's like tarantulas out there, and I remember there was like a tarantula, and there was like some guy like servicing the house, and he got scared by the tarantulas. My parents were like, "Kashia, go up there." Looking back now, I'm like, why would you send a kid up there to like?
Why send the child?
It's
That's all they
fine.
got. You
These
know, when
are
you're the oldest or the only, they're like,
yeah.
send the kid out there. We need an extra hand.
Oh my God. Okay, so you were very used to like being outdoors, working with your hands, which I think comes into play as you turn into an adult, like hint, hint, hairdresser. But what were your other interests at the time, like moving to a new place and like starting up this project? What was school like? Like, how were you adapting to
Mm,
like this new, almost ranch-esque life?
I had a hard time. I was always very a weirdo in school. Like when I want to say like 7, my parents just thought it would be cute to cut all of my hair off. So I had like a little, like short little pixie cut. And I was just like this new kid who was like, didn't really know how to like, go up to others and like try to talk to them and make friends. And I had a weird haircut. People would like ask me if I was a boy. And like, I was very tomboyish. Like, I didn't really have any like sisters around to be
Yeah.
like, hey, like, wear this cute skirt, things like that. So it was a little awkward and, but I found some good little friends here and there. And I remember like doing gymnastics a lot by myself and
Like,
like playing a lot of handball.
did you take classes for gymnastics or like,
Actually, I took tap and jazz, but I would literally just like play on those monkey bars like the entire break. Like, don't even talk to me. I'm like doing my flips
so
or I'm like
you just
doing handball.
adapted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
you
would
were
just
not
like,
like a complainer.
no, just like find things to do and yeah, just have fun.
Oh, okay. So around what time did you start to kind of figure out the things that you were interested in? I mean, did you have an idea of what you wanted your future to look like, or like did you want to follow in like your parents' footsteps or anything like that?
Yeah, I would say like around the time that I was like 11, I started drawing a lot and I really was into art. And then probably around like 12, 13 is when I really started listening to like a lot of music. And music has always been a part of my upbringing, actually. Like my mom was very into music. She listened to like a little bit of everything. Like she taught me like all of my foundational stuff about music. And my dad was actually a musician and he was always in a band. So
Oh,
yeah, there was always like band practice at our house and things like that, and just like going to concerts and stuff. So as I was exposed to that world, I started to find the stuff that I liked and that resonated with me personally.
what are some of those things?
So like music was so inspirational to me. Like I really, really love music. And then just again, working with my hands, like whether I'm building stuff or creating stuff or drawing stuff, like that was always something that I felt like I needed to do. Like collaging, like just writing, like journaling, just all that kind of stuff.
What is your favorite type of music or genre?
I really cannot say. I feel like you would expect like, oh, she likes alt music, but I literally like everything. And I feel like the more weird something is, the more I'm interested in it. I like really experimental types of music. I like rap, I like rock, I like everything in between. I like oldies. Like I stay up on the trends. Like I like all the new music that comes out too. Like I'm always like listening to something new. Like, oh, this is my jam right now.
Okay, okay. So your dad had you working outside with your hands a lot. What was your mom doing at the time? Like, were there any like examples around you of like other forms of creativity that like you were starting to become drawn to, or was this just all sort of internal and like you just leaned into the things that felt good to you?
Yeah, well, I was playing instruments too. Like I was experimenting with that. I played a little bit of bass, I played a little bit of guitar, I played a little bit of keyboards. Never got too into it. I was like, I like this, but it doesn't feel like something I'm wanting to do. I did a little bit of singing as well. My mom, actually being a hairstylist, surprisingly, like, I think my whole like up to my adolescence, she wasn't doing hair. She was working alongside my dad and he had his own business and she was doing graphic design for him. And I was running around with her and like going to dealerships. He was in like a car alarm business. So we were always together. I mean, my dad had his business and me and my mom were just like homies. Like I would be running around with her. So really like my childhood was really about being there for my parents. I didn't really get a lot of time to like explore
Just be a
myself.
kid. Yeah.
Yeah, my mom did inspire me, I think around the age of 14 after my parents had split up by that time. I would sit and I would watch her do hair after work every day in middle school. So that was, I feel like I definitely retained some stuff and like got interested in that. And then like later in high school actually started being like, hey girl, let me color your hair. Let me just see what these scissors do. Like I'm experimenting. And then by the end of high school, I was like doing everyone's hair and makeup for prom.
Oh my
Like,
God.
yeah,
Well, you're literally a magician, but I've been with you since the beginning. And
you have.
yeah, I
You're
can
like my
totally.
longest time client.
Also, also your quote unquote loosest client. Because I always say
Loosest.
we won't talk about that. Not in not in those terms, but because I always
What's
take
your
my shoes off.
yes. Just come
Anyhow,
in, drop everything, take the shoes off,
because I'm
sit
so
Indian style in the
comfortable,
chair.
it's like my
Yes.
therapy session. Okay, so the hairstyling came as a passion early on in your life.
Early.
What did that look like? I mean, it's really sweet that you spent so much time with your mom, but I think I remember you also mentioning that there were a lot of people in your family that actually had roots in hairdressing and you didn't find out about it until later on.
I literally just found out about that a couple years ago, which is it was one of the most, I think, chilling and like connecting to the universe experiences that I've ever had.
Just like right,
Um,
like you're in the right place.
yes and no. Like I was just like, oh no, I'm like dealing with like my ancestors' karmic like cycles. Like I have to break the cycle or something. Like it freaked me out. But I also was just like, whoa, like I feel so connected to my ancestors. So yeah, recently we had I believe she's like my fourth cousin living in France write a letter to my aunt who she found on Ancestry. It was translated, so it wasn't like probably word for word how she wanted to say it, but basically she just said, "Hey, I want to let you know that being a hairstylist runs in our Italian family." And she says, "My dad was a hairstylist up until he passed away in like his late 80s." She said basically that my great grandpa and my great great grandpa came here from Italy to Ellis Island and were already working in Rome as hairstylists with their whole family. My great great uncles as well. They decided to come over here together with my great grandpa's 15-year-old wife.
Oh my
They
God.
were they were like 15
Time
and 16,
times were
married.
different.
Yeah, they were married. I mean, they came here from Italy married with my great great grandpa, and they started their first hair salon in 1920 in New York City in the
Wow,
US.
that is wild. That's so
Yes.
wild. For our listeners, you have a very unique and diverse, and I would even say spread out background in terms of family. You mentioned having family in Mexico. You're
Hmm.
talking about family in Italy. Can you give us a quick like rundown of your family tree?
Yeah, I don't know exactly how you mean, but I would say that I'm first generation here, Mexican, and I'm third generation Italian here.
Is your mom's side's Italian, your dad's side's Mexican?
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I think it's of all the things of knowing you and then also of listening to you sort of like how you grew up and you took on a lot of responsibility as like the only child, even though you're not necessarily the only child. I think it's really interesting how much family has been a factor and really made you who you are in terms of your sense of responsibility and most likely your drive too. Like just being used to just, keeping on going no matter what. And it's really cool because you do have such a large, different, like you have family members everywhere. You have Uncle Jack, who is like 100-year-old celebrity on Instagram now, and your
crazy.
step siblings and everything. And for those of you who don't know Uncle Jack, we'll have to like link him in the show notes because his story is also incredible. But
He's so cool. He's gonna be 101 on
yeah,
July 31st.
yeah, he's amazing, and he is a fabulous storyteller who consequently loves getting his hair cut.
Yes.
Okay, so
Short.
back to Sam. Back to Sam. So you're doing everyone's hair for prom and everyone's makeup, and you're just naturally so good at it. At what point did you say, like, I'm gonna turn this into my career? Like, I'm gonna make a living out of this, and that these are the steps I need to take? Or did you just kind of like figure it out as you went?
I'm gonna actually backtrack a little bit because
Okay.
I think that how I got into that actually starts even before that. So, um, I want to say around the time that I was 11, my parents, my stepdad and my mom finally split up, and it was just a terrible split up. Like their relationship was so um volcanic, I would say. Constantly fighting, like my dad was very abusive towards my mom and I witnessed a lot of that. It was like probably something that I think has affected me to my core, like to this day. But they finally split up when I was around 11. Um, and my mom did okay as a single mom for a while. That was when she started getting back into doing hair. She wasn't doing hair the whole time that they were together. And so she was like, okay, I'm on my own. Like, I'm not going to work for his business anymore. I'm going to do what I know and I'm going to get back into that. So she worked at a couple of different places. And then at some point, I want to say around the time that we moved to Acton, she became addicted to drugs. Like, there's really no other way to say it. She just did. And for that reason, we really started to butt heads. I think as an 11-year-old, I just already knew what it was, even though I wasn't really sure. I became like really angry with her. And I basically looked at her as like, I don't want to be a hairstylist. Like, this is not for me. This is not the I don't ever want to be like her, which is crazy. Gosh, there's so much to tell that I'm really kind of just trying to like condense it. But basically, at a certain, I want to say around the age of 15, shortly after I had met my biological dad for the first time in Mexico, my mom started dating this man who she ultimately married and has been with until she passed away. This is really hard to say, but I'm just going to say it. It's definitely like a big part of who I am. Around the time that I was 15, my mom and my new stepdad, they weren't married yet. We moved to Northern California for a little bit. We moved into his place. And again, like I said, my mom was using drugs. I'm sure he was too. They said something like, "Oh, we have to go back down to Southern California, get some things. Like, you'll be okay for a few days, right?" They never came back.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was there for, I would say, I wanna say it was, like, maybe a month or so, and at that point, like, again, another secluded place. This house was actually so sickening, it was, like, owned by Levi and built by Levi Strauss. Like, this gorgeous, like, totally wooden house on stilts in the forest in Northern California, but there were no neighbors, and the phone didn't call long distance, and I found myself literally, like, eating condiments to, like, survive, and I just said, "Oh my gosh, like, I think I have to call my stepdad, and I think I have to, like, ask him to come get me." And I walked to a neighbor's house, and I called him, and he said, "No problem, baby girl, I'm coming to get you right now." And from then on, I moved back to Acton with my stepdad, and I was so angry with my mom, and I remember she would call and I would say, "I don't wanna talk to her, like, I don't want anything to do with her, like, tell her we can talk some other time, like, I'm over her ass," basically. Beep.
Sam, how old were you?
I had just turned 15.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. And you were there for a month by yourself.
That was in the summertime of I think it was supposed to be my time in between freshman year and sophomore.
I had
Um
no idea.
There's a lot more, honestly, that I could go into about that. I mean, because I think that it's kids experience such horrible things that they have no control over, and it all has made me a part of who I am today, like, so much stronger than I could have ever imagined I can be.
What did you do during that time that you were there by yourself? Like, at what point did you realize they weren't coming back? And like, you were old enough, obviously, to feed yourself. Um,
Yeah.
but at what point were you like, shit, this is bad?
It was when I literally, like, had no food left. I mean, like I said, I was literally eating, like, mustard and ketchup, and I was like, I think I'm so hungry that I think that I have to, like, go do something about this." Like, I remember doing some walks in the forest because it was, like, a really beautiful area, there was, like, deer around. I remember, like, kinda watching some stuff on TV. I don't know if they had, like, basic cable or what. I was kinda just like, "Whatever, it's summer break, I don't have to worry about it." But going back to before that, my first year of high school was really messed up too because my mom became so addicted to drugs that basically she just didn't enroll me in school. And at the time, we were living in like this house full of all these different people. This was like right before she met this new boyfriend. I basically convinced one of my mom's roommates to take guardianship of me. I literally forged my mom's signature and I said, take guardianship of me and put me in school because my mom is not doing it.
This was just like you just knew you needed to be in school. You knew you needed structure. Something wasn't
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It must have been really difficult to see your mom be so addicted to substances. And at this point, it sounds like it had been going on for several years. Were you just becoming numb to this and you were just trying to like figure it out day to day? Like, what
Um,
kinds of thoughts were going through your head at that time?
I was very angry. I was very angry because I mean, my mom and I were so close when I was little, and like she was such a good mom that it really made me angry and like upset to just witness her like downward spiral. And I mean, I was always the one who was like pushing my mom. Like when my mom and my dad, they were in such a abusive relationship, I would just beg her. I'd be like, "Mom, you need to leave him. Like you can do better than this. Like you know that you have like a skill, like you wouldn't be jobless, like we could do this." I mean, when she started using drugs and I literally caught her. I saw something sticking out of her pocket and I said, "Excuse me, like what is that? Like what are as an 11-year-old, I was like, what are you doing?" Like I was literally mothering her. I was just like, this is so not okay. Like, how can you do this to yourself? And so, over the years, I would tell her things all the time and she would just kind of project things onto me and just be like, "You're such a bad kid, like, you have such a bad attitude," and I would
Mhm.
just be like, "No, like, I'm angry at you, and I deserve to be," and I always, like, stuck with my instincts and, like, trusted myself and, like, knew that I was in the right on that.
Did this manifest when you had to go to school and you had to function away from home?
Do you mean like
Did it
did it like
affect? Yeah.
affect me
Mhm. Mhm.
heavily? So like I had told you earlier, my cousins moved to Acton later. So that was during my ninth grade year. It was really rough for me. I think at that time I was living in a trailer, like a fifth wheel with my mom after my mom and my stepdad had broken up. And I mean, just even my basic needs, like basic needs that every child should have, were not being met. Like I blacked out a lot of it. I don't even know how I survived, to be honest with you. I kind of just did what I needed to do, but it was definitely manifesting at school. And my closest friend was my cousin, my older cousin Charlotte, who was going to school with me. And I really felt like she was the only one who kind of really had any idea what my life was like. But she had a really rough upbringing and living situation as well. So I think she was kind of just like, hey, like, what's wrong with you? And I didn't want to accept it at the time, but I was depressed. And she was just like, you're not fun anymore. And I would kind of just like just kind of just exist at school. I would kind of just be there, and I still had friends and I was still capable of like having joy and laughing and hanging out with friends, but I think I was very, very heartbroken at that time. And after basically, my mom, she abandoned me later on that summer going into 10th grade. I had basically just failed everything in school. There was half the time that my mom wasn't taking me, and then half the time I didn't even want to go because I was
Yeah.
just so embarrassed of my life and so unhappy that I went from having like okay grades in the beginning of ninth grade to literally straight F's end of ninth grade.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was bad. And so at that point, I moved back in with my stepdad. He was kind of like my savior, but he was experiencing really bad mental illness. He was manic depressive bipolar. I think he was just kind of figuring that out. I think his whole life he had kind of just been like somehow functioning. I mean, but it definitely explains why my parents were like so chaotic and fighting and abusive and all that stuff, but he was still in some way like my only sense of like routine and normalcy and like just like my rock.
Yeah.
So going back to live with him, he was just like kind of sat me down and he was like, look, you do not want to be like your mom. You need to find a passion. You need to really follow it. You need to figure out how you're going to pick your grades up. He's like, you gotta push through this basically. Like you can't just give up. Like you need to keep making friends and having fun and being a kid, and like don't even get a part-time job, like just be a teenager. And so that was like my saving grace, really.
Wow. It was your permission to just be.
Yeah.
So what happened next after failing out of all of your classes? Like hearing that from your stepdad, did you receive it well initially? Or were you like,
I was like, I'm already on it. Like I
yeah,
already know what I need to do. I would love to be able to do that. I just need a little bit of help.
yeah,
And so, I mean, dude, like the ninth grade was so bad that they literally sat me down at the end of it and had one of those meetings with my mom and was just like, what's going on with her? Like, she needs to figure this out. So, went to the same high school and they were just like, look, girl, your grades were terrible. I mean, what can we do with you? We have this school at the old Act Elementary School. It's only one classroom and it's for kids who just really need to catch up. And I think that's your only choice, because if you can't catch up, like you're going to have to do all of this over again. And we feel like you'll be able to catch back up sooner if you go and do that. And I remember crying. I was like, no, this is so embarrassing. Like, no, I don't want to go to the bad kid school. Like, I'm a good kid. Like, I know that I have more potential than this, but like, it just was what it was. Like, I
yeah.
had to make up those credits. And so I had like a fire in me. Like, I was like, I am determined to get out of this like bad kid school and like just get back in there so I can be with my cousins. I can be with my friends again. Like, I'm going to do this.
Wow. I cannot believe that you were so incredible at compartmentalizing given everything you were going through at the time. there were, there are always the kids that you're like, okay, they need to do like the catch up courses. And, for most of the time, you don't really know why. You just assume it's okay, bad grades, whatever. But this is such a it's an incredible reminder of all of the things that are happening behind the scenes that you have no idea what's going on. I mean, we're friends. I had no idea what was going on at the time. And I would have run into you in the hallway and you would have had a smile on your face and you would have been perfectly calm and kind and lovely.
Yeah.
And it's just so wild. I am so glad that your stepdad was able to, sit you down and even with mental illness, have the capability to show up for you, that you had one person in your life.
Yeah.
Were you ever able to repair your relationship with your mom?
No. I mean, yes and no. Basically, didn't see her for years. She was literally just like living on the go, who knows where. I did eventually, start talking to her on the phone a little bit, and she would say things like, "Oh, I really want to be able to get a place. I really want to," like some washed up mom stuff. And then her husband would weirdly call me and be like, "Oh, your mother, I wish she could get sober." And I was just like, I don't look, I think this is where I have to like draw a line of boundaries for myself. And that's something that I've had to do throughout my life. Like whether it's a family member or it's a friend, like I am not afraid to draw a boundary if I need to for my own mental well-being.
Is that capability an instinct, or did you have to work your way up to it?
It's an instinct, 1,000%. I have never felt bad about giving myself the space that I need and putting up the boundaries that I need between people who are toxic or doing things that are hurtful.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you really took your career right out of the gate, and you've always seemed so single-minded about it. I mean, coming out of high school, you already had a job at a salon, and then there was always like, as long as I've known you, it has always been a job or a training program or educational program suited to furthering your career. And it's
Yeah.
always seemed like you've been so driven toward just being the best version of a hairdresser and stylist that you could possibly be. I don't want to like toot my own horn, but I would say that I have like the most difficult hair to work with. And you are just the most patient, kind, like magician with dark, stubborn, thick Asian hair that there ever was on this planet. I've never walked out of your studio being like, what happened?
I have
Um,
patience. I'll tell you that much. I have been through some ish.
when we say patience, I understand why you can sit and do my hair for 8 hours now.
Yeah.
Um,
I've literally been through hell and back again, honey.
Yeah, yeah. What are some things, you've gone through all of these really difficult things that some people can relate to and other people just can't imagine what that feels like. I hope that there are girls out there or individuals out there that gain a lot from this because I'm sure there are situations going on in homes that we just have no idea about, whether it's domestic violence or it's drug abuse or, it's depression, mental illness. Like there's a lot happening behind closed doors for everyone and everyone's going through a hard battle. But this is a really singularly difficult journey, I think, Sam, that you've really persevered through. What are some of the things that have driven you through these periods? I know you said your stepdad was one, but internally, do you have like things that you tell yourself or habits or like daily mantras or just something that you have to do in order to make sure that you're successful?
I think for me, it's that I am very tapped into like the I don't want to sound too like witchy and spiritual, but like I feel like I'm tapped into like the collective consciousness. Like I've always known that no matter how isolated I was, living up a 3 mile dirt road, living up in the middle of nowhere, like on all these acres, like I always knew that there were others around me doing things that I would like to explore and learning things that I would like to learn. And that's kind of what's always, I'm like, I know that there's always going to be better. Yeah. Like that's, I mean, that's basically the sum of it.
Just constantly like bending towards the light and just going toward the good.
Yes. Tapping
Yeah.
into like the universal. Yeah.
When you realized that you were depressed as a teen, I mean, was that your unlock? Was just realizing like there's more out there?
Yes and no, because I think that some of the trauma that I endured came in waves as I grew up and as I, grew into like even a young adult in my 20s. I definitely like looking back and say that I harmed myself in different ways. But one thing that I'm so thankful for again is that tapping back in and just saying like, hey, like checking in with myself and just realizing, oh my gosh, like what am I doing? Like I can't be like drinking to this extent. I can't be harming myself. I can't be, this is not good, like, for anybody. Like, it's
Yeah.
like it's gonna affect the people around me, and so I think that's something that always kinda pulled me back in.
Yeah. I hate that you had to learn that lesson by being the person on the other side of it, but it sounds like somewhere in all of that you had learned how to internalize what you didn't want to be and how you didn't want people around you to feel.
Yes.
One thing I really admire and that I can see from this entire journey, you mentioned you have no problem setting boundaries, which is very protective. But I think the other side of that is that you've also really learned how to curate your people. You really have learned how to prioritize your energy toward the people and the things that are doing good for you in your life and vice
Yeah,
versa.
and vice versa, yeah.
What's one piece of advice that you could give our audience on, how to find those people, how to find those relationships that work for you in your life that are soothing rather than detrimental?
To me, it just seems pretty simple, if someone does something that's very hurtful to you, like, you should have no problem telling that person exactly what it is, and then just, like, letting them be. 'Cause you'll see them, like, people like that will just have cycles of like, "Oh, yeah, things are better," and then they hurt you again, and then it's like, how many times do I need to experience this to kinda just know, like, this is who you are? And then the other way, it's like you just meet people who you just instantly click with, who make you feel good. They wanna explore the things that you wanna explore with you. They wanna, like, basically support you and vice versa. Like, you'll just find yourself being more attracted to, like, those types of relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really strong advice. I mean, you'd think it wasn't rocket science, but I think not everyone has such a strong instinct to be able to create space for themselves. I think it's actually we've had this pandemic, right, of COVID, but we also have this pandemic of just not being able to sit with oneself and just be content. And it sounds like that's something that you are a constant student of is just figuring out what feels good to you in your life and how to perpetuate more of that. I see that in your career, in your relationship with your husband, who is the sweetest human being at your wedding, and I've told you this, I just
He's an
couldn't stop
angel.
looking at Nick because he couldn't stop looking at you, and you're like, that's the dream is to, like, have a partnership where you just have so much love and respect for each other that it's literally oozing out of your skin,
Yeah,
and it's the most
he's an
beautiful
angel.
thing. He is. He is.
He's my angel on
So is
earth.
your so is Batty Dog.
My son, my dog.
Oh my gosh. What is your favorite part of your like journey to becoming successful as a hairdresser and creating this safe space for everyone that comes to you and for, creating this like really beautiful space to express your creativity and share your gift with the world?
It's kind of like what we were just talking about how you repel the things that don't work, and then you uplift those people who want it and who need it. And having been a person who's gone through so much and I've been bullied, like, I've been teased for being different. I felt like an outsider. I felt like I don't have somebody that I can express how I feel and what who I want to be and have nobody to support me. So I feel like that is why it's been so important to me. Like, that is the most joyful part of my job, is to have somebody come in and to guide them through kind of figuring it out what it is that they want, because this image of what their hair is going to be, it really is catapulting like what they're gonna do with that haircut. Where am I going? Like, what am I gonna tackle? Like, I'm going to this new job interview, I'm going on this date, or like I'm transitioning, or I'm affirming, my gender. Like, it's all of that. Like, people need a safe place to do that. And I've ended up now in a studio salon because I have personally felt that that is probably the most judgment-free zone. If you're just with me, like, you can kind of do and say whatever you want without having to have like maybe this like, I don't know, I don't want to bring politics into it or anything, but like, like maybe some like judgmental person over here who's like spewing hate, or like this person who's like, what are you doing over here? Like, what is that haircut?
Like, don't dye your hair pink or blue or cut
Yeah,
it into
yeah,
a
or like, you're
mullet.
a
Like,
girl, don't cut it short. Yes, exactly. All those things that, nobody needs to hear, and it's none of their business. Like, I have always been really just like a person who stands up to bullies, and like, I'm here to just be that for my clients.
I love that. And it's so true. My youngest brother, David, is turning 20 this year, but a couple years ago, he started seeing Sam for his haircuts because he's like a really stylish, like cool kid. And he really wanted a mullet. And so, but like a cool, like faux hawk mullet, and he has really curly hair. And so Sam did this amazing haircut on him. And at the time, he was working at In n Out. And he actually got suspended because they said, you have to cut your hair, or you have to, yeah, no, they said you have to cut your hair. My brother said,
Yeah.
can I wear a hairnet like the girls with long hair do? And they said, no, you can't do that. And my brother, out of spite, was like, well, first of all, I just paid $65 for this haircut and Sam cut it. I'm not. He's like, I used my hard earned money. It's not coming off. Like, you can suspend me. And he kept kind of like pushing the issue of like, if the girls can wear hairnets, why is it that I cannot wear a hairnet to secure this like 1 inch of hair that you don't like? And they couldn't give him an answer. So he ended up walking away. And I remember him telling me the story, and I was like putting my fist up in solidarity, like,
Yeah. I
don't
love I love
conform.
that I love that he did that. I mean, because at the end of the day, I don't want to get too political, but I'm just gonna say that's a Christian company. They have their set idea of like who's gonna work there. And I think it's so great that people are able to explore themselves and to find themselves now more, and that more places are being open-minded about hair colors and like everything that goes with that, like identities.
Yes, I love the freedom of expression. I'm all for it, and I love that, regardless of the type of company or who's running it or what, I like the fact that there's a way to stand up for yourself without being like rude or disrespectful, but just sticking to your ideals and being firm in that. And that's why I was so proud of my brother. But it also was a really awesome haircut. I think that your path to where you are, Sam, creating your business, getting through childhood and surviving it in the way that you did, given everything that you had to go through, and still managing to remain empathetic and positive in a way that's real and authentic, and in a way that resonates with your clients, and to create a business and a space for people that's safe and inclusive and creative and wonderful. It fills me with so much pride and so much hopefulness, and I think it's incredible. And for anybody looking to build something for themselves, anyone who's had a tough childhood or a tough teenagehood, or, has gone through anything similar, to be able to sit and listen to your story and see that you can create a life according to your wishes and your desires and create something really lasting and meaningful and successful, it's just so inspiring. I would really love to keep you for hours, but I'll do that at my next hair appointment.
Sounds good.
So in the meantime, I'd love to shake this off with a quick Fast Five, where I ask you 5 quick questions, kind of silly, kind of fun, and then we end with one closing question.
All right.
Okay, number 1, are you a night owl or a morning person?
Night.
All the way. It's that Scorpio.
Night. Not even a question. I will stay up as late as I can possibly keep my eyes open.
Okay, number 2, what is your guilty pleasure?
That's really hard. I feel like I guess it's just that I like really cringy things. Like some really like hard to listen to music and like just like TV shows and stuff that will just make you like wince. Like that's the stuff that I like.
Like Pen 15?
I love Pen 15.
It's so awful because I'm like,
Oh,
that's me.
that was me. Like my Ishi Peters with the bowl cut. Like I
Yeah.
identify so much with that.
Oh my gosh. This is why we're friends. This is why
I
we're
love
friends.
cringe.
Yes. Okay, what is the worst haircut you've ever given?
No, I've never, honey, ever. They're all beautiful. And that's one thing I feel like honestly people are like, "Oh, like what's like a hairstyle?" Like, no, I think everything is beautiful and I think everyone is beautiful in their
I
own way.
I do freaking love this. I love this answer because I agree. Okay,
No bad cuts, just bad people.
that's your daily mantra.
Yeah.
Okay, number 4. How often do you change the color in your hair?
I've been a good girl lately. I've been rocking this for about 4 months. I rocked my last hairstyle. I changed it a little bit, but I rocked it for a good few years. When I was not emotionally well, perhaps I may have changed my hair color
More often.
many, many times to the point of like my hair is in distress. And now
Oh
I'm
my God.
chopping it all off again.
Oh my God. Number 5. Does Nick ever let you do his hair?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when we first started dating, we always had the same hair color. I dyed my hair red. He was like, "Can I have red hair too?" I was like, "Okay."
Oh
And
my
I'm
God,
like,
that's
"You
like
know
David
what?
and his girlfriend.
So cute." I'd be like, "Oh, you know what? I think I want to go blue." He's like, "Can I go blue too?" I'm like, "Of course you can, baby. Let's go." We like went crazy during COVID. Oh my gosh. He let me do like cheetah print spots on his head. Like we really had a
What?
good
I
time.
need to see. I need to see. When I say that Sam is creative, I will link her page. Like, you've got to follow her. She's insane, insanely talented, and insane, but mostly insanely talented.
I'm gonna send you that picture because it is crazy. It was like teal with green and black spots. Like it was so cool.
Talk about being unafraid to push boundaries and just explore and be creative. Okay, here's our final question. We ask this of everybody that comes on the show. What is one quality you had as a young adult or teen girl that you didn't recognize or take pride in then, but you look at now and you're just so proud of it?
I would say being different and not going with the crowd. I didn't know why I didn't like the same things as everybody else when I was a kid, but now it's probably something that I feel so proud of, like the most proud of. I think that everyone's individuality is what makes them like so wonderful and who they are. And I support everyone in that, including myself.
I love that so much. Thank you for sharing yourself with us and our audience and for being vulnerable and for letting us into your world a little bit. It's a magical place, a little dark, a little spooky, but just so magical. And I
Hmm.
really appreciate your openness and your honesty. You're such a beautiful human being, Sam.
Thank you, Mama. I so appreciate that.
All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for listening. You know where to find us. We are going to link Goth Hair Bae in the show notes, but you can follow her at Goth Hair Bae, BAE on Instagram. Do you have a TikTok?
I do, but there's like nothing on there.
It's okay. All you need to do is
Alright.
follow her Instagram, DM her if you want to see her for any of your hair needs if you're around the LA area. And with that, I will see y'all next time.